everybody, or good afternoon, I should say, at this stage, and welcome along to this edition of LiR Confidential on lirmedia.tv. And our usual email is info@lirmedia.tv. And please subscribe to our channel by pressing the red button. And if you can't see the red button, you need to go to Specsavers. It's on the right-hand side of the screen as you're looking at it. I'm delighted to welcome to the show this morning Dr Catriona Cahill, Chief Economist with the Limerick Chamber of Commerce. Catriona, will I call you Doctor or Catriona?
Let's just keep it with Catriona.
Okay, Catriona, welcome to the show, Catriona. Great to have you, I know you're very busy, How did you come to the subject of economics yourself growing up and when you went to university? What enthused you, I suppose, to pursue that kind of work as well,
Well, I would have studied economics as a Leaving Cert topic, and I was very fortunate in the teacher that I had at that time. She was excellent, and I think she ignited a bit of a passion for me in that subject. I'd be lying if I said I had always wanted to be an economist. When I was much younger than that, I had different kind of job paths in my mind. But I chose economics for my CAO application, and then I did economics and sociology in the University of Limerick. And then when I finished that, I went into doing a PhD in UL as well, focused on economics.
You focus on economics, and obviously, you echoed something there like myself. I have a love of history and Irish, but it's all down to the teachers. It's all down to the communication abilities of a teacher and to engender or instill that love of the topic or the subject, make it exciting for you as a young person, as I'm trying to say. And so you got your PhD in economics. Were you lecturing for a while then?
I was. So I started the PhD in 2011. And when I started it, we were just in the aftermath of the crisis. We were we weren't in the recovery stages of it yet. And I suppose while I was doing it, funding across the board for education was cut, and it was very difficult to get funding support to do kind of masters and PhDs. So it became evident kind of a year into it that I was going to have to work while I was doing the PhD. So I took on the full-time teaching gig, and then I did the PhD part-time.
That was a challenge in itself, It was a day and night work, I suppose, for a while. And how long did it take you to do your PhD?
So it's just over 5 years.
Right. And what kind of areas did you cover in that, then did you finally settle on, so to speak?
Yeah.
People who may not know the process, I am, because Mary, my colleague here, Dr. Mary Honan, I sat through her ordeal going through a PhD,
I think when I first decided to go the path of doing the PhD, I had originally wanted to do it in the area of environmental economics because it was of interest to me. But unfortunately at the time, the supervisor who had been there and was an expert in that area, they were leaving UL for a new opportunity in a different university. So I kind of also had an interest in productivity and state-owned enterprises. So that's the pathway or the topic that I chose. So basically my research analysed the whole state-owned enterprise sector in Ireland in terms of its productivity and how changes in competition in the market or regulatory changes in the market influence the productivity of those particular firms.
Right. And so, exactly. Then after that, you came, obviously, I'm with Dr. Catriona Cahill from Chief Economist with the Limerick Chamber of Commerce. So, Catriona, I don't have to tell you anything over the last 18 months. It has been a dreadful, challenging time for small and medium and all businesses, really. In our own case, we began trading. Trading is is a euphemism for opening our door on January 2020, ourselves in LiR Media, and as you know, in March 2020, everything went belly up. And of course, we weren't trading long enough to qualify for any of these grants anyway. But that's not the fault of the grants, that's just the way the system is. Now, the Limerick Chamber of Commerce, I mean, how do you view, is business in a critical condition in Limerick City and County?
I would say it's a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. The impact of COVID, it was definitely a two-tier impact. We had some sectors like pharma, for example, of which we would have a significant presence in Limerick and the Midwest.
Yes.
They performed quite well. They were very resilient throughout the crisis period. So it was very much our members who were in retail and hospitality who were hit particularly hard. And who are still in a very vulnerable position to date, because, even though we're moving out of lockdown now, there is a lot of, or I say a lack of clarity around certain information or timelines, which is it's obviously very concerning. But at the same time, I think we have to acknowledge that throughout 2020, the government did step up to the plate in terms of providing the supports that were necessary, like particularly the wage subsidy scheme. And the clubs have been of huge support to those businesses. But I suppose really, like, we've never felt that it's our place as a business representative organisation to comment on public health advice or to critique public health advice. But we would more so say that, look, if this is what we have to do as a country to get us out of this crisis, fine, but provide the supports and give clarity in terms of timelines and reopening. And I think a lot of businesses have been very patient in that regard. And I think frustrations do start to come out when there's mixed messaging, because, businesses have to plan in advance, several weeks in advance, in terms of reopening if they have to abide by particular public health guidelines, so that can be a stressful situation for them, and particularly if it changes at short notice.
That's a fair point, and I'm a retired civil servant for my sins, and one thing I noticed myself is paperwork. Too much paperwork, too much red tape, and you might have awarded the Limerick Enterprise Office because the paperwork is horrendous. Now, there was a grant available, I was looking recently on it, and we didn't even bother applying for it after. There's a grant available, it's not a lot of money, it's 2,500 to improve your website, to make it more friendly, to make it more amenable to do business on, for the want of a better description. But in order to apply for that 2,500, I'm not really familiar with the paperwork involved with it. It's very off-putting. Do you find any feedback from businesses like that? I know in our case we didn't bother with it.
Yeah, we would get feedback in terms of processes and timelines, and I suppose responses to applications as well can be quite delayed because of backlog. And look, it's understandable with restricted resources, particularly at local level, for processing some of these grants. But I suppose the Chamber, in our discussions with government and through Chambers Ireland, it's one of the areas that we do push about simplifying the process, because, as I said previously, businesses are already in a stressful situation as it is. And support, either you're making the supports available and simplistic to access, or you're not, and that is an area we would push on. And I think there's a lot of other individuals out there who would share your frustrations.
Well, there's no alleviation for rent as well either when you're paying your rent, because it's down to the individual landlords, as you know yourself. That's not something that the Limerick Chamber, I know, can directly get involved in, as I'm well aware of that. But do you get much feedback about that? Because we still have to pay up front all our rent anyway, even though we're doing nothing.
Yeah, we would, all throughout the crisis, we would have had members reach out, and we would have reached out to members ourselves to try get an idea of where they were struggling, because it's partly our responsibility as well to appropriately, I suppose, reflect all of the issues that businesses are facing. And even though we're not directly involved in, the relationship, we don't serve as an intermediate between a business and a landlord, but we still would raise that as an area that the government would need to be aware of. So if there was, let's say, an agreement at some point between a landlord and a business in terms of delaying payments on rent, we would have to make the government aware that this is something that it's a can that's been kicked down the road. And at some point, even though you're considering the viability of a firm, you have to bear in mind that these delayed payments that will become active again at a particular point in time. So that's why we've always been saying you have to be careful in terms of how you phase out the supports for businesses during this period.
And I live out here in Shannon, and as you know, the aviation industry. Look, the aviation industry taking a huge hit with COVID. I mean, we all know that. That aside, but before COVID struck, I came to Shannon to live in Shannon in 1989, and by God, it was one busy airport. And the aviation industry probably have to go through some kind of a realignment, so to speak, when this thing finally lifts and we get into full operational mode. But do you think, Catriona, I noticed you made a presentation to the Transport Communications Network, and do you honestly think a small island like ours can afford 6 or 7 or 8 airports? I think it's nuts.
Yeah, I think it's a politically sensitive topic. Anytime we try to get into that discussion or debate, I think that there is certain benefits definitely that the airports bring to particular regions, but I suppose there's an argument with regards to the variance in the benefit given the size and the catchment area, because look, as you say, we have to be realistic in terms of our population and catchment areas, but Shannon Airport for us is a huge priority. Even before the pandemic hit, we had been concerned about Shannon Airport because I suppose one of the elements was that post-Brexit, because Heathrow was the EU hub for Shannon. Post-Brexit, Shannon Airport was going to be left without a European hub. So that was one concern for us. But passenger numbers had also been falling in Shannon Airport since 2017. So we had commissioned Copenhagen Economics to do a review of aviation policy. Because I suppose where our concern is that it seems that Dublin Airport was dominating the market, and that both Shannon and Cork airports were losing market share due to Dublin Airport. But I suppose coming from the Midwest, and when you're in the Midwest or you're in the South, you can be accused of being biased in terms of some of the arguments. So that's why we felt it was important to bring in these international independent consultants to carry out the review for us. And what they clearly found from their evidence was that was the situation that was presenting, and that it wasn't a similar situation that was replicated in a lot of other countries. You didn't see the same dominance in the capital airport in other European countries.
Oh, you don't?
You don't know. So why it was unique to Ireland as well is because we're the country that has as our national policy balanced regional development. But yet we have these individual sectoral policies that contradict what we're trying to achieve in terms of Project Ireland 2040. So with that report, we brought it to government, we met with the Taoiseach, we met with the Minister for Transport, and we pointed out that, national aviation policy, which was published in 2015, so it predated Project Ireland 2040. So we were advocating for, you need to do a review of this policy, because what you have is a situation where you're allowing the capital airport to keep growing beyond its planning cap of 30 million passengers. You're considering about putting more costly investment into the Dublin Airport, whereas across the rest of the country, you have these existing underutilized assets. So there was no public conversation happening about, firstly, how big do we want the capital airport to grow, in terms of, is it to the benefit of the country if it grows beyond a particular point, or more importantly, is it to the benefit of the residents in Dublin if it grows beyond a particular point? And then it's certainly not to the benefit of the regions who have airport infrastructure that just isn't being utilized. And yet we're supposed to fall in line and believe this national policy of we're all about regional development.
Yeah, and Catriona, I was saying that obviously I don't have to tell you, over 90% of the traffic is into Dublin Airport. Now, I was looking at Schiphol and the ones you mentioned and all. That is not the case. That is not replicated throughout Europe, And I know we have, aviation is always a challenge for us because we're an island, obviously. That's the only way we can get off with our sail. And so I think I can walk up to the airport. I'm dead where I'm living, but yes, I can't go where I want to go. If you follow my drift, I have to go down to Cork. I don't mind going down to Cork because I'm from Cork anyway, but out to Dublin. I think it's nuts for people in Shannon having to go to Dublin to fly out to what we call normal places. Like most of our connectivity is with the UK because that's where we're closely aligned to a lot of relations, relatives, friends, and all of be in the UK anyway, and Europe. After that, transatlantic. But what would you be saying to the transport minister? I mean, obviously, reduce the, as I said, put the cap on numbers. There's 20 million. Was that the cap you originally mentioned going into Dublin Airport?
So there's a planning cap of 30 million, but prior to the pandemic, Dublin Airport actually exceeded that. They had 32 million passengers. But now that the third runway is being constructed, there is talk of potentially further down the line having to have a new terminal. There's nothing confirmed around that, but it's just more so logically if you think about it. But that would allow them to grow probably in excess of 40 million, which just doesn't support what we're trying to achieve regionally.
I mean, if that runway comes about and that extra terminal comes about, sure. I don't want to be doom and gloom, but I mean, really, that would spell further disaster for the regions. I'm thinking of Knock, I'm thinking of Derry, I'm thinking of Waterford, I'm thinking of Cork and Shannon and Belfast, because Belfast, people forget about Belfast in the equation. Belfast is on the island as well. So, I mean, there's a huge, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is because honestly, I mean, you're fairly challenged. I mean, the expert group, not to be able to point too much, what did the expert group bottom line was about balance? I mean, you can't have every airport, we know that, but you could make a case for Shannon, definitely outside of Dublin, to build up its traffic.
Yeah.
And maybe Cork as well. I know I'm from Cork, but I mean, on a purely business model, surely you could make a case for Shannon and Cork. Possibly, I don't know.
Yeah, I think in terms of what came out of the report, the consultants did point to other European countries where, if ever there was a time where where the capital airport had dominance in the market, the difference was that those governments were intervening with policy to try to reverse it. But we hadn't, up to that point, seen the same response from the Irish government. So,
right.
Aircraft movement caps, for example, were being implemented on certain airports. Now, in those situations, why those caps were being implemented was because either there was infrastructural capacity constraints with the capital airport and they couldn't build any more, or there was environmental constraints in that the residents around the airport didn't want any more infrastructure built. Whereas in our case, we're in a similar situation now where Dublin Airport has gone above the planning cap. I know that there's a lot of, when they were planning on building the third runway, there was a lot of feedback from local residents about concerns from, air traffic noise and things like that and pollution. So that is starting more now to come into the debate. So an aircraft movement cap is one area that you can go, but I think for the regional airports, we have a history in the country of supporting regional airports that are privately owned, but not supporting the regional airports that are state owned, which is quite a confusing stance. For example, Cork and Shannon can't access CAPEX supports under the regional airports programme, whereas the private regional airports can. And that's a national policy because at European level, state-owned airports who are under 3 million passengers can, under state aid rules, receive CAPEX support. And both Cork and Shannon airports are under 3 million passengers. Now, I have to point out as well that since we commissioned that report and we published it and we've had conversations with government, at the time they committed that they would do a review of national aviation policy, and they're following through on that commitment. So they are currently reviewing aviation policy now. Which is good, yeah. So hopefully we'll start to see, and I think there's a recognition as well that Shannon and Cork airports, until they reach 3 million passengers, they will need government support to a degree, whether that's through supports for the development of routes. But I think now the focus is switched because of COVID and the impact of COVID. And more so now we're focused on retaining the connectivity that we had and getting that back. And then further down the line, growing connectivity and route options from the airport.
And before we leave the aviation sector, I mean, obviously in Shannon, we have one of the longest runways around in Europe, you know. And I think there needs to be a more vibrant, a more, what's the word I'm looking for? I think it has to be looked at. The marketing of Shannon Airport as being a bit deficient, for the want of a better word, or using any word for it, has been deficient, notwithstanding COVID, you know, for over many years. And I'm thinking of the instance in the Hinch when my son and my grandson went down to the Irish Open Golf, and Shannon Airport didn't have a stand down there.
Oh, really? Okay.
Not even a stand there to give out leaflets, and hundreds and hundreds of Americans in there for the golf in the Hinge. I'm not saying that as a blatant criticism. I'm saying that they have to take more responsibility if they're entrusted with running, like yourself. You're the chief economist at Limerick Chambers. You're answerable to someone or somebody, you know. You know what I mean? For your job, and everybody is really. So that's all I'm saying without being too harsh. And I think you have to get suitable people. I don't care if there are 20 women or 20 men, suitable people to drive Shannon Airport and Cork as well, you know. But anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And I do think, you know, Shannon Airport themselves obviously have a major role to play in this. There's only so much that stakeholders in the region and the chamber can do in terms of trying to make the policy environment more productive. But really, it's operational on the ground as well. And I think that there are a lot of moving parts here in order to make the airport a success. But I think at the end of the day, you know, we have to recognize that, like in terms of economic value to the economy, Shannon Airport is worth 3.6 billion. And, you know, and a lot of people don't realize that it's to do with the ecosystem, the aviation ecosystem outside there. You know, they think that Cork Airport is of higher economic value to the country, but it's actually of less economic value because it doesn't have that same aviation ecosystem cluster. Yeah, so I think that's important to recognize that there are significant knock-on effects in the economy if we do not support our regional airports.
Well, more certainly, Catriona, when I came to live in Shannon, I had an inkling how important it was, but I had no idea until you actually, I don't say you have to live in Shannon to know, but I'm just saying that all the spin-off little bit, all the small little industries, small businesses, the spin-off from the aviation in general, from the airport in general, is huge. Cannot be measured, as you said. It's huge for people and the number of people employed. But my special guest is Dr. Catriona Cahill, Chief Economist with the Limerick Chamber of Commerce. And don't forget to join. We must join ourselves, actually. We're just going to all act together. But there was an Indecon report on Limerick City and about, I suppose, planning and the 2030 economic and spatial plan and all of that. And they're expecting that the population will increase naturally by 10% by 2040. Is that what is that by birth alone or by immigration? I wonder. I don't know. Did you take everything into consideration there?
Yeah, it's a mix. It will be a mix. Yeah. So
now, around Limerick City, Catriona, where are you from yourself originally?
I'm from Limerick City, born and bred. Proud Limerick girl.
Some of we'll get the depressing points out of the system first. Some of the depressing points for me walking around Limerick City is we were up there on Mallow Street till recently, so we're going to. But the amount of dereliction in the city centre itself is disquieting, to say the least.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. I don't just think it's a problem in Limerick. It's actually a problem across the whole country. Yeah, but I think it's one of the reasons that we decided to commission Indecon to do the Future Limerick report, because I think at the time so just to explain the chamber, so we have a board of 15 individuals who are business leaders, and our strategic, I suppose, roadmap is led by our board. So we would have had board members who expressed concerns about some of the vacancy that we were seeing in the city centre, but also in terms of the lack of private development. You know, we were seeing development, but it was very much coming from the Limerick 2030 DAC, which is a vehicle owned by the council. And we weren't seeing private development separate to that. So they had expressed concerns. And then we had a number of members who expressed concerns about the city centre, because if you think about trying to attract skilled individuals to any region now, it's not just about the financial package that's offered by the companies, it's about the quality of life component, and placemaking feeds into that so much. So when businesses in the Midwest are trying to attract and retain talent, you know, the offerings in terms of amenities in the city centre and things like, you know, access to education or childcare, like the presence of primary schools, secondary schools, things like that, health access and offerings, you know, play such a big role in an individual's decision to move to an area. So I suppose it's up the chamber. We've taken on a policy approach where we very much advocate for placemaking, and we advocate now in a lot of areas where traditionally business organizations maybe wouldn't have been involved in the past. And I think you can see that with the Future Limerick report that we published, because it's a very broad report. You know, it looks at employment, it looks at health, it looks at social inclusion, and then it puts forward 67 recommendations for the local authority, for government, for the chamber ourselves, because there's more that we could be doing across certain areas as well, and we recognise that. And I suppose the report in itself, like, it wasn't a situation where we wanted to do this report and then put it out there and be like, we have all the answers, because we don't, you know, there's no silver bullet solution to this. But what we're trying to put forward in the report is recommendations of how stakeholders can better collaborate to drive particular projects in the city.
Well, there's no doubt about it, Catriona, that public transport and the private car do not go side by side. Does not work. I know any few trips I've made to Dublin, it's blatantly obvious. You cannot have private cars going into the city centre and an effective public transport system. Something has to give, and something will give. And I say the same in Limerick City. I'm in Shannon, I come in the bus, and it's, 12, 14 miles from Shannon to Limerick. And if you come in early in the morning, you're snookered. So you wait between, I'm not in any hurry in anywhere, so that's not me. But if you're going to work in the morning from Shannon to Limerick, it can be an horrendous journey, not because of the public transport, because of the idea of the one person car going into the city centre. I think is a 19th century idea. It's got 20th centuries. It's not fit for purpose. So my suggestion to the Limerick Chamber would be no more private cars allowed within 2 miles of Limerick City or any big city.
Yeah. So in the report.
Yeah, if you want to use a private car and you want to come into the city centre, you'll be charged a hefty fee for it.
Well, some European cities are going down that route now, and I think, you know, the report that we commissioned clearly shows that we do have an over dependency on private car in Limerick. But more interestingly, the report, as part of it, they do what's called a geographic information systems analysis, where they take the electoral divisions across Limerick, and they look to see how far in terms of walking distance proportion or elements of the population are from key services like schools and parks and hospitals. And what they found was that a large portion of our electoral districts are within a 10-minute walking distance from all of those services. So we have the right characteristics to support a significant shift in commuting patterns in Limerick City. We just have to implement the right policies to do it.
That's right. And I mean, the city centre itself, I mean, I don't know what, there's no easy answer. It's easy for us, I suppose, you and I to make policy for other people. That's the easiest part to do. But the implementation is, and having the vision to sell it to the general population, I think, is a challenge for both the Chamber and for everybody else concerned. But I really think the long-term answer, you cannot have public transport and private cars by their thousands going into any urban area anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
we won't have an efficient public service, and you'll have complete congestion. You know, and it worked well in London. It works well in London, now. The congestion charge, but that's a misnomer as well. There should be no congestion charge. Shouldn't be going in at all. I don't know
Yeah.
what. Do you drive? Do you drive yourself?
I do drive, yeah. I do. So when it's sunny enough, I'd cycle, but there are days when it's raining that I do drive. I'll hold my hands up to that. But no, look, I think it is a priority for the council to reduce private traffic coming into the city centre. And they've made that statement, but I suppose, as you said, it's about action on the ground and actually following through on it. It's very easy to say you can do something. But I think we have to recognise as well that it has to feed into what's been proposed at a national level as well. Like, there's some policy that's there at national level. Like, if you think about how a local authority is funded, for example, one of their big incomes is car parking and fines. So they're, as you can imagine, very hesitant to implement anything on the ground that will adversely affect their revenue streams. So I suppose there's questions then at national level around, well, how do we work through that, and how do we change how local authorities are funded to support them making the changes that they need to make on the ground? And I suppose for Limerick, we're going to have the election of a directly elected mayor soon. And I suppose that might provide us with an avenue to start looking at these things in much more detail and thinking about different ways, because we want to get more people as well living in the core of the city centre, because like COVID just showed us how fragile our city centres are. They became they were just ghost areas after COVID, because we didn't have the presence of retail and hospitality, and we didn't have the presence of office workers. So for, I think, future sustainable football in the city, we have to have a stronger residential presence in the city centre. But yet, again, if you're trying to achieve that by turning commercial buildings into residential buildings, there's no incentive there for the local authorities to drive that agenda, because, again, they're losing potential income further down the line from that building no longer being commercial. So these are all different issues that have to be addressed as well.
As you know, and I'll tell you, Catriona, there's loads. I'll be looking up a lot when I walk around Limerick now. I'll be looking up at all the empty second and third floors of an awful lot of buildings, and a lot of them could be apartments or flats for people to, as you said, to move life into the city centre. But as you said, there's a balancing act again, like everything else in life. There's a balancing act. Someone will have to bite the bullet soon on those things anyway, And now, I think you had a plan, was it? Did you float the idea of pedestrianisation of O'Connell Street?
Not specifically within the Indicon report. What it did call for was a placemaking plan, because right now the council are implementing a public realm strategy. And we were trying to highlight that as part of that, there should be a public consultation on a placemaking plan, because they're also trying to develop a traffic management plan at the moment. And I suppose from our view, the placemaking plan should inform the traffic management plan, and not vice versa. So it was a recommendation about, as part of the placemaking plan, to identify potential pedestrianisation zones that could be developed over time for Limerick.
Yes, and also I know you noticed down in Cork City recently they pedestrianised Princess Street, which is off the Grand Parade beside the English Market, and it gave a whole new vibrancy and excitement to the city. I went down to see it myself. I have a sister living in the city, and it just gave a whole new life and had a huge spin-off effect to businesses around it as well, So I'd be all in favour of O'Connell Street, certainly those between the two bridges as you come in, that part of it there, pedestrianise all of that, I think it would give a whole new lease of life to the place, but that's only myself, because I like walking anyway. But Catriona, what about the challenges now for yourself, and for how long are you in the job, by the way?
So I'm with the chamber now. It'll be 3 years in October.
You're okay. You're still.
I haven't lost the will to live yet. Anyway, no. I'm still passionate, because It's very interesting job because no 2 weeks are the same. Like, 3 weeks ago we were publishing the Future Limerick report and we were doing a lot of media, local and nationally, around that. And then, last week we were doing meetings with the Taoiseach and Minister for State Peter Burke. And then this week I was involved in the National Economic Dialogue. So it's always very exciting in here.
Of course, a lot of these meetings are online, I presume, are they?
Yes, yeah.
That makes it more challenging because it's always better to sit around the big board table, and see people and, and gauge people's, it's a human thing anyway, to gauge people's expressions and all. So there's always that little bit coldness when you're online. I know we're forced into doing our programs online, and that's the way it is like, but it's not the same as having that clash of opinions around the table. It makes it, and you can get, I think you have to be, I suppose, you have to learn to be more less wordy and more to the point on online meetings. Would that be right?
Yeah, I'd agree with that because we've commented ourselves several times, particularly for our board meeting where we'd have 17, 18 people on the call, and like you said, it's very difficult on a Zoom call to read the temperature in the room. So you could say something and not realize that you've ruffled feathers and that you have some apologies to make. So it is hard in that sense. But I think as well, I think it actually serves to lessen the time of some meetings, that in person could potentially drag on longer than necessary. I would say it's made certain areas of the job more efficient. And I think it's exciting as well to see how successful certain businesses and sectors have been in transferring to online, because we're certainly expecting, from feedback from our members, a lot of businesses to keep a hybrid approach when things go back to some degree of normality, in terms of maybe 3 days in the office, 2 days working from home, or vice versa. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
I know. I have a daughter in the civil service, and she's working at home now. But I think that a lot of people, many people, are getting tired of that. You know what I mean? It's not the same as the office.
Yeah, the full time you would. Yeah, I can imagine the full time working from home. It could be.
Well, that's their own challenges anyway. When you spoke at Economics, I mean, how did you find that? I think it's a fantastic concept myself, anyway.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. Even before I was invited to be on the panels, I would have gone anyway as an audience member. I think David McWilliams and Nisha, who runs it in the background, I just see that they do an amazing job. And I think what it's done is it's taken a topic that some people can portray it as being overly complex, and that it doesn't apply to everyday life, and it does. Economics is everyday life, and I think it's just brilliant to see people from all different backgrounds come together and just engage in a discussion on particular topics that traditionally just would have been confined to maybe being discussed in an academic situation. And it brings humor to it as well, which is fantastic.
And is it on this year?
No, I don't think they haven't announced plans for it anyway this year. I think
it will work online anyway, Catriona, will it?
It would be hard, but the same individuals who run it are involved in the Dalkey Book Festival. That was run online recently, and they did a brilliant job, and it was really successful. So it might be possible to do. I think it just would change the format. But I think some of the special elements about Kilkenomics is that you're in the pub and you're engaged and you're having a bit of crack as you're talking about these issues, and that's hard to capture, I think, online, like you said.
I mean, David McWilliams, to me, I mean, he came, he's 30 years more on the go now with, when he hit the scene first in RT with some challenging programs, and opens people's eyes, I suppose, awareness of economics. As you said, it's not an academia thing for horn and glasses, and nerdy types, it's for everybody. It's like when you get up in the morning, it's like planning your meal, You have how much money have I to spend today on food? How much money have I to spend on utilities and all of that? That's where it all starts. But people don't equate it with the bread and butter issues, you know. They equate it with more academia thing, you know, like
Yeah.
I suppose like a subject rather than life, you know, rather than being part of life, you know. But I think
Yeah.
that's ourselves going to the school as well, you know. Sure. Did they take? I'm an old folk, you know, and I remember doing. There was home economics, a subject called home economics. Katrina, remember that? Well, you was it
That
gone?
was there as an option while I was there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, was it an option? Was it?
It was, yeah. It was option in lower, I think low for lower junior cert. I don't think we had the option when we went past junior cert, but it was,
I
yeah, it's funny because home economics to a certain degree, outside of the baking and the cookery element, you know, the management of the household accounts traditionally and all of that, you know, like there was historically um trying to budget, you know, when you budget an economy, you're technically doing a similar type of budgeting. Now, I think a lot of economic theory and policy is kind of moving away from that restrictive idea of budgeting, and we're starting to see a lot more interesting discussion now around rethinking economics, which is really exciting to be involved in. But I think it's very much about who's communicating the economic ideas to you. You know, you will have some very traditionalist individuals who, it might sound mean to say it, but who will make it sound quite boring. So it's great when you have individuals come out who actually get across how exciting an area it is to look at.
exactly, and I think it's a subject that should be more to the fore. Certainly, more to the fore. People should look at the. We talk about realignment of everything on the show, but I think home economics is a topic that will affect and does affect every single human being, whether you're married or single, whatever, you know, if you're living in a flat or a house, apartment, or raising a family, it's all part and parcel of it. Katrina, I know you stuck for time, but for Limerick Chamber now, I suppose a lot of those plans now, for your challenge, I suppose, in Limerick Chamber is to sort of push away from behind, push these things into being delivered, and encourage people to do that. And are you hopeful as a chamber now in the area in Limerick where we are in the Midwest area that we will get back to some kind of vibrancy business wise very sooner rather than later?
Yeah, look, I think we're already starting to see evidence of that and how vibrant, you know, the outdoor dining has been. I think, you know, retail might struggle a bit more, but that's not to do, I think, with anything to do with reopening. I think it's just retail was struggling prior to the pandemic with online shopping.
Yeah.
But I do think, you know, we're starting to see positive results in the national economic data that's coming out. We still look, we have to be practical as well. More than likely, we still will be close to 10% unemployment by the end of this year. But all indicators are saying that we will start to see positive growth next year. So we are positive. You know, the businesses in Limerick are positive. You know, and it's just been fantastic walking around the city over the last 2 weeks. You know, it's everyone's so excited. And yes, okay, we've had some not so great news recently, and I suppose mixed messaging. But we will move past that, and there's a lot happening in the region that we have to be excited about. And there's a lot of developments kicking off. So yeah, so the chamber, we are very positive in our approach to how things will work out over the next year.
Absolutely, Katrina, and there's no doubt Limerick Chamber are blessed to have Dr. Catriona Cahill at the helm of, I suppose, driving the economics behind the scenes. And we were delighted, Katrina, that you took time out to be with us this morning on LiR Confidential on LiR Media. No doubt we will check in with you again in a few months' time, if that's okay with you. We'll mark your card in the meantime.
No, thank you very much for the invite. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you very much and for appearing on this edition of LiR Confidential. So from myself, Pat Barry, and from Dr. Catriona Cahill, until we meet it again, goodbye and God bless.